Hi, fourth graders. Today we are going to start learning how to round. Today we're going to focus on rounding to the closest 10 and the closest 100. What that means is if I'm rounding to the closest 10, I want to know what 10 is my number closest to. Let's look at some examples. If I am rounding the number 83 to the nearest 10, okay, so I'm first going to draw a number line, and I want to know how many tens are in this number. The answer is there are 8 tens in this number. So I'm going to draw my number line. Okay. And then I want to know, how many tens are there? I'm going to mark one end, and there are 8 tens, but we also write 8 tens as 80. Now I want to know what is the next 10 after 80, and this is 90. Then I'm going to mark my halfway point on my number line. So I'm going to try to decide, is 83 closer to 80 or is it closer to 90? So I'm going to mark my distance. The distance between 80 and 90 is how far? The distance, the amount between 80 and 90, is 10. That means that half the distance between 80 and 90 is 5 and 5. And that means that 85 is in the middle. So now I'm going to decide, where does 83 fit on this number line? So I'm going to mark where 83 fits on the number line. And now I know that that is 83. So now I'm asking myself, it is closer to 80 than it is to 90. So 83 rounded to the nearest 10 is 80. Let's do some practice. So I'm going to round 72 to the nearest 10. I ask myself, how many tens are in 72? And there are 7 tens in 72, but we write that as 70. So I'm going to put 70 on the number line. Okay, then I want to know what's one more 10, what's the next 10, is 8 tens, and we write that as 80 on the number line. What is halfway? Halfway between 70 and 80 is 10. So 10 is the distance, so halfway is 5 on each side. So my middle number is 75. 75 is halfway. Now I want to put 72 on the number line. Now, which is 72 closer to? 70 or 80? It is closer to 70. So we would round 72 to the nearest 10 would be 70. Let's do some practice ones together. I'm trying to round 27 to the nearest 10. So the first question I'm going to ask myself is, how many tens are in 27? There are 2 tens. We write this as 20 on the number line. What is one more 10? 3 tens. And we're going to mark that as 30 on the number line. So now I want to know what is halfway. Halfway between 20 and 30. So I know the distance between 20 and 30 is 10. So I know that halfway is 5 on each side. So I know that 5 more than 20, which is halfway, is 25. Now I'm going to put 27 on the number line. Which is 27 closer to? 20 or 30? It is past the halfway mark, so it's closer to 30. So 27 to the nearest 10 is 30. Let's do another one together. How many tens? 32 is rounded to the nearest 10 is what? So my first question is, how many tens are in 32? If I look in the tens place, there are 3 tens. I'm going to write that as 30 because 3 tens value is 30 on the number line. Then what is one more 10? is 4 tens. And on a number line, we write the value. So I'm going to write 40 on the number line. Then what is halfway? Well, I know the distance between 30 and 40 is 10. Then I know that half of 10 on each side is 5. So what is halfway? 35. Now I'm going to put 32 on the number line. Is 32 closer to 30 or is it closer to 40? It is closer to 30. So 32 rounded to the nearest 10 is 30. Let's do one more. I'm going to round 23 to the nearest 10. First, I ask myself, how many tens are in 23? Well, there's 2 in the tens place, so there are 2 tens. And on the number line, we write the value. So I'm going to write 20 on my number line. Now, what is one more 10? It's 3 tens. And on the number line, I'm going to write its value, which is 30. Now, what is halfway? I know that the distance between 20 and 30 is 10. And then I'm going to split that in half, which is 5 on each side. So halfway is 25. It's just 5 more than 20. Now I'm going to put 23 on the number line. Which is 23 closer to? 20 or 30? 23 is closer to 20, as we can see on the number line. So 23 rounded to the nearest 10 is 20. Now let's look at rounding to the nearest 100, which is our largest place value. So 634, we're going to round to the nearest 100. So I'm going to ask myself, how many hundreds are in 634? And there are 6 hundreds, and on the number line, we write its value. So my first number is 600. What's one more 100 is 700. And on the number line, I'm going to write the value of 700. So now I want to know what is halfway. When we were rounding to tens, we knew that the distance between the two numbers was 10. But now we're rounding to the 100. So the halfway is a little different. The distance between 700 and 600 is now 100. Okay, so I'm going to divide that in half, and there will be 50 on each side. Okay, so halfway is 650. It's 600, and 50 more to halfway is 650. So now let's put 634 on the number line. Where would that fall? Here you see 634 in the number line. Is 634 closer to 600 or is it closer to 700? It's not quite halfway, so we're going to round to 600. So 634 rounds to 600. Let's try one more. 872 to the nearest 100. We're going to round it to the nearest 100. So the first question I ask myself is how many hundreds are in 872? There are 8 hundreds. On the number line, I write its value, 800. Now, what is one more 100 than 800? There are 9 hundreds. So I'm going to write its value on the number line. Now I need to decide what is halfway. I know that the distance between 800 and 900 is 100. Then I'm going to decide what is half of 100. So each side gets 50 and 50. So 850 is halfway. It's 800 plus 50 more to our halfway mark. Now let's put 872 on the number line. Where would this fit? There's 872. I'm going to ask myself, is it past halfway? Is it closer to 900? Or is it closer to 800? I can see on the number line that it's closer to 900 and it's past the halfway mark. So 872 rounds to 900. Today, you are going to do some practice. In today's practice, you will be rounding to the nearest 10 and to the nearest 100. Okay? It looks just like we did in our practice video. Okay? The first one is done for you for rounding 73 to the nearest 10. You're just going to answer these questions just like we did together. It says, how many 10s are in 73? I did this one for you. There are 7. And we write that as 70 on the number line. Then what is one more 10 is 8 tens, and we write that as 80 on the number line. Then what is halfway? I'll put my 10 here, and I know 5 and 5. Halfway would be 75. Now you would put 73 on the number line. You decide where does 73 fit between 70 and 80 if the middle is 75. 73 is going to be closer to 70. Now let's look at this one rounding to the nearest hundred, and let's do this one together. Okay? It says how many hundreds are there in 372? And I'm going to write 3. Okay? And then what is one, and I wrote that up here as 300. And then what is one more 100, which is 4. And I wrote it as 400 on my number line. Now what is halfway? Well, I know the whole distance is 100, and half is 50. So 300 plus 50 will give me 350. And then I would put 372 on the number line. If the middle is 350, 372 would come after 350. So is 372 closer to 300 or 400? The answer is it is closer to 400 on the number line. So 372 rounded to the nearest hundred is 400. Today in your practice, you're going to do 2 more rounding to the nearest 10 and 2 more rounding to the nearest 100. Good luck and work hard.